Hey guys, how's it going? Josh back again with another Retro Redux video. If you are unaware what the Retro Redux is, let me just give you a quick reminder. The Retro Redux is essentially a series in which I go back in time and watch a bunch of old science fiction, comic book, superhero, whatever, anything in that bubble. I go back in time from anywhere from 6 months to 60 years ago, rewatch an old movie that I either didn't see or have seen and see how my thoughts have changed in the current time. And today, we're discussing the best Fantastic Four film, maybe until I rewatch the sequel or the reboot. Jesus. We're talking about Fantastic Four in 2005, that one specifically. The Fantastic Four is about a group of scientists going up into space to conduct an experiment and gather information about the DNA and maybe curing diseases and things of that nature. Unfortunately, a space, I think, storm or flare or something happens that causes 4 of the scientists aboard the spacecraft to develop powers. For some reason, it seems like outside of the main 5 characters, there's no one else on this ginormous billion-dollar space station, so only the Fantastic Four develop superpowers, as well as Victor Von Doom. And then eventually, when they come back to Earth, they just have to deal with their powers and learn how to adjust to society, I guess. After rewatching Daredevil, Hulk, and now this, I really would love to get an Ultimate Alliance movie, but set in like the mid-2000s universe of all of these characters. Like, just imagine if Marvel had the confidence to just make like a one-shot movie like that isn't connected to the rest of the MCU. I would literally buzz. And unlike this review, this movie really doesn't waste time getting to where it needs to be or where it thinks it needs to be. It really doesn't waste time. The movie starts, introduces the characters, their mission, and then they're on the mission. The only time it really does waste time is the obligatory Sum 41 snowboarding montage. Like, this movie came out in 2005, but it feels more like a movie that came out in 2002. I mean, just look at how they get their powers. As I, have gone through this movie and given my review for it, I realized like this movie and many like it, especially during this era, suffer from the Burger King Mighty Meal moments from movies that they'll add to like a kid's toy commercial for Burger King or McDonald's. This movie is filled with lines that really don't connect to anything else but sound cool when they get played at the middle, end, or beginning of a Burger King commercial.
Damn, I've been waiting to do that.
And it's honestly the same thing that plagues the MCU's dialogue today. Even in this film's moments of triumph, there are clear moments that it's made for commercials, and it lacks the realistic nuances, the earlier entries of the MCU had and some of its contemporaries had at the time, like Spider-Man, like Blade, like X-Men. Hell, even Daredevil has more human moments than this movie does. The MCU has somehow become the very cinematic style that it was created to be the alternative to. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some pretty decent things about this movie, I guess. It's surprisingly endearing. I think this movie, out of the 3 Fantastic Four movies I've seen, if I could just compare it to the reboot, this handles the team family aspect way better than the reboot does, but these people still really aren't the Fantastic Four that you would be used to if you watch the cartoons or the comics, which I get. It's a different interpretation of these characters, but the best thing about the Fantastic Four is the dynamic between them, and it is fine here. I think it's much better when they don't have their powers and they're just normal people, but once the powers kick in, it gets a little disconnected for me. I just think the dialogue itself really isn't that good. I mean, sure, it works, but and the actors do a great job of delivering it, like Michael Chiklis. It's just a way that this world works, I guess. Maybe it's this early 2000s Marvel thing, but when I compare it to the original Spider-Man or the first Blade or even the first couple X-Men movies, there's more weight and groundedness to those movies. There's way more human moments. There's way more actual conversations taking place, whereas here, it leans into the fantasy element so much that even our main characters, including Victor Von Doom, are just not real people. And there's plenty of like cheesy power puns based on the 4, which grows a little tiresome very early on.
Is it true what they say about him, that he can expand any part of his anatomy?
Well, I've always found him to be a little limp.
They also get their Fantastic Four name in the most unceremonious way possible. Now, I haven't read many Fantastic Four stories, but how many of them just get the name from the news immediately after they're seen for the first time in public. Like, if I remember correctly, in the first Spider-Man movie, it takes Peter, you know, stopping crimes to the point of getting notoriety, and eventually until he gets his actual suit before he gets his name in the media. These guys just get it on the news like immediately. Speaking of getting their names, they get their names from preventing a tragedy taking place on the bridge, which is just completely their fault. And that scene escalates quick as fuck. Speaking of the bridge scene, why does Jessica Alba get naked to sneak past the crowd of people on the bridge when it seems like that was completely unnecessary? Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, Jessica Alba taking off her clothes, I'm all for that, right? I think everyone would agree. However, literally 2 seconds later, it seems like Mr. Fantastic and the Human Torch had no issue getting past the crowd either. Now, you know, we're talking about how cheesy this movie is, how cheesy the dialogue is. That doesn't mean it's without sauce. There's some sauce here. Like, they cooked a little bit. There was a transition that I noticed when, like, Doom holds his hand up versus Johnny holding his hand up, and I was like, oh, okay, you guys, not bad, not bad. But I mean, outside of the Fantastic Four, there isn't really much here to this movie. It's incredibly short and it wraps itself up pretty fast. I just think the thing that holds this movie back is truly the lack of like emotional human depth that we got in its contemporaries. Even Blade, which really doesn't focus on the emotional aspect of the character and the other characters in the film, that film does a much better job of displaying these characters as people. This film, however, they're not really people. They're just caricatures of what we would imagine the Fantastic Four would be. And speaking of the Fantastic Four, let's talk about them. Let's talk about who I feel like is truly the main character of this film, and honestly is one of the better aspects of it. Ben Grimm, aka The Thing. I feel like he's truly the main character. His story is tragic. It actually is pretty effective. You feel bad for him. His story is super tragic, but his makeup, I feel like, kind of undermines it. However, I do believe it's saved by his interactions with Alicia Masters. I think Michael Chiklis and Kerry Washington actually have really good chemistry, and I feel like if the relationship between Ben Grimm and Alicia Masters were in a much better written film, this character would be much more revered. I actually think Stan Lee called this performance from Michael Chiklis his personal favorite comic book movie performance. I love Ben's relationship with Reed, like how he's constantly ready to beat the shit out of someone who threatens or even seemingly threatens Reed, and I think that's just like really cool. I love how loyal he is. This fucker hates Johnny. Like, seriously, after the first prank Johnny pulls on this dude, you'd swear that he told him the worst news ever. Like, he wants to rip Johnny's head off the entire movie. And to be honest with you, when we talk about Johnny in a little bit, I kind of see where Ben is coming from, bro. I'm not gonna lie. I also really like the dichotomy between the rest of the Fantastic Four pretty much enjoying the intrigue and mystery around getting their superpowers. Meanwhile, Ben is getting like the fucking bubble guts. I do think his thing form does look hilarious, unfortunately. Like, the first frame you see is his hand, and I literally laughed out loud, like he's struggling to dial a payphone. Dude walks up with his fucking Trobel fedora hat. Also, I guess his organs are covered in rocks, which I don't know how that works. Is his blood like molten? Like, is it liquid rock at that point? Like, how does his biology work? I don't know. Also, there's a part where he walks into a bar and like every step he takes for some reason causes the record to skip, but like nobody's drinks to shake or anything like that. I just thought that was really funny and actually kind of sad when he falls over and he gets up and he's like, that's not funny. He has a wife in this movie named Debbie. It's Shorty from The Walking Dead, Laurie Holden. I forgot who she was in Walking Dead, but I vividly remember hating how they wrote her character in the show, especially versus the comics. And here, it's more of the same. Like, I really don't like this character. I used to hate her for the whole, oh, come on, like, it's fucked up. He is like a hideous monster or whatever, but it's your husband. As I got older, and especially on this rewatch, I kind of have to concede that, yeah, he is a rock nigga. After kind of siding with her, I immediately went back to hating her because why the fuck was, not only was she on the fucking bridge, but she left her engagement ring or her wedding ring, I'm assuming, on the ground, and then he couldn't pick it up. It's so sad. But yeah, Ben is I feel like definitely one of the brighter spots in this movie. Then we get into the leader of the Fantastic Four, Reed Richards, portrayed by Ian Grufford. And to be honest with you, I feel like he does a really good job at portraying like a slightly neurodivergent, hyper obsessive, meticulous guy like Reed Richards is. However, he doesn't really have an edge to him at all that most of the Reed Richards that I'm familiar with do. He's just a really nice guy. Things don't really phase him the way you would expect. Even when he's getting yelled at, his reactions are just kind of like, hey, wait, like, let's just chill out. I would have loved if they had given him more of an asshole-ish, egotistical edge to kind of justify Victor Von Doom's motivations, but to be honest with you, Reed is kind of the perfect guy. He's just an idiot when it comes to relationships. The special effects around his powers are either really bad or really gross. It actually really intrigues me and scares me when I think about the fact that we're getting a Fantastic Four movie soon, and I don't know how they're going to handle the CGI, considering the MCU, especially as of late, hasn't had the best special effects, but hey-o. And I think the reason, or the main thing that keeps me away from truly conceding or liking this Reed is that he's getting chased by a literal queen in this movie, and he's like a soft boy cuck, and I'm sick of it, bro. If you don't get your queen, dog, she literally yearning for you, my dude. And then we get to his queen, Sue Storm, and shout out Jessica Alba. They literally whitewashed her, which I think is actually kind of funny and tragic. What else can we say other than, like, come on, dog, she can fix me. I think this awoken the milkman in me. I can't even speak. This entire movie, me and my homeboys, we rewatched it together, and man, I was just starstruck every time she entered the frame, bro. She can literally fix me. Also, shout out to the obligatory bikini scene on the bridge that I mentioned earlier, because it turns out that scene was added after she was casted, which, I mean, duh, right? She's also a really awful human being. Like, don't get me wrong. I was just on the side of, like, Reed, if you don't get your girl, but, like, the shit that she does to get Reed's attention and affection and love is actually really terrible. So yeah, she's an awful human being. Honestly, in a movie with Victor Von Doom, we get to the worst human being ever. Johnny Storm, portrayed by Chris Evans. Chris Evans as Johnny Storm in his first scene seems to be, exactly what you expect Johnny Storm to be and what I remembered him to be, which just was like, he's kind of a prick, but you love him at the same time. But as the movie goes along, this dude is a literal cunt. He is a terrible dude, and the shit he says to Ben throughout the entire movie is insanely mean. And then the shit that he has the audacity to say to Reed later is insane. He is really funny. He actually has one of the funniest lines in the movie that, every time I hear it, I laugh.
Where are your ears?
And let's get to the villain of the movie, Victor Von Doom. Now, Victor Von Doom essentially helped me realize why I don't think I could ever take a Fantastic Four movie seriously unless they lean into the more incredible serial-esque kind of storytelling and line delivery and world building. I don't think I'll ever take this team seriously because the nigga's name is Von Doom. Like, it is the ultimate comic book character, and I don't think the MCU has truly found the right balance of comic bookiness and live action translation. They seem to have lost the plot when it comes to that, lost their mojo on like the perfect blend of reality and fantasy, and I think it's really going to rear its head with the Fantastic Four characters and their entire side of the Marvel Universe with Galactus and Silver Surfer, and the poster boy of that is the fact that this nigga's name is Von Doom. I think in the the reboot they changed his name to something else, if I remember correctly, which to be honest is the only way it could work. I think the Von Doom title has to come with time. The Doctor Doom title has to come with time. Julian McMahon does, he does a decent job here. I do like the fact that he's a bit sassy and does have certain cadences that are similar to Doctor Doom from what I've seen. It's a little confusing because sometimes he does have an accent and other times he doesn't. I wish they kind of like chose one for some consistency. I also think his descent into villainy and madness is a bit hilarious. It's like, oh man, my hair is falling out and I'm becoming ugly. Look at these scars. Boom, I'm a crazy motherfucker. He does have goat bitch slap though. I don't think I've seen a better bitch slap in a superhero movie thus far in the Retro Redux series than his bitch slap on Ben. I think it's legendary. His mask, and when he gets it, is so unearned. He just gets a mask somewhere. You really don't know where it is. I think it's in his office, and it's like, all right, I guess you're doomed now. Once he gets the mask, the ADR is awful.
I can't let you do that.
Reed? I'll be right with you.
You know, the final battle crawled within an inch of its dying breath, so Guardians 1 could just fucking fly as a final battle. There are a couple cool shots though, like things standing in front of the ginormous inferno that they created. This might be one of the worst final battles of like any Marvel movie. Other Marvel movies I've critiqued already, like Daredevil and like the Hulk. At least there was something cool, at least there was action, at least there were cool moments and aspects to those, at least there were stakes. There's nothing here in this movie's final battle, and to be honest, it feels like there's nothing there for this entire movie. Literally no risk to how this story is presented. It's incredibly safe. It is the ultimate family story mixed in with the cliche Hollywood comic book adaptation, and it's filled with goofy shit like fucking Doctor Doom, one of the most dangerous villains of all time, and the Thing, Ben Grimm, one of the most tragic heroes of all time, sliding down a hallway filled with water. Luckily, however, this film doesn't overstay its welcome, and it has a shorter runtime, and when it's over, you're just like, finally, this shit's over. But there is some fun to be had. There are some funny moments, like the little prankety prank montage in the middle and shit like that. There could have been a better movie here, but this is something that has completely turned into like a guilty pleasure of mine, something that I would turn on in the same vein as like Batman and Robin or Catwoman, things that are just like, yeah, this isn't a good movie, but I mean, you could have fun while watching it for sure. What did y'all think of Fantastic Four? Did you think it was a classic? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did you just think it was alright? Let me know in the comment section down below, and I will see y'all in the next Retro Redux. Bye bye.